Call to the honourable member for Macquarie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Speaker. My question's to the Treasurer. What does the decision taken today by the Reserve Bank mean for Australians? And what progress is being made in the fight against inflation, and how does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and to the member for Macquarie for her very timely question, because the Reserve Bank has indicated in the last few minutes that they'll be leaving rates on hold at 4.35%. Australians would understand that this outcome today is not a surprise. It was an outcome that has been flagged well in advance by the Governor of the Reserve Bank. And what this means is that rates haven't gone up since last Melbourne Cup Day. So it's been a year now since rates last went up. And that reflects, I think, Mr Speaker, that reflects two things. Firstly, the impact of rate rises already in the system. Australians are already doing it tough enough when it comes to dealing with these higher interest rates. And secondly, it reflects the progress that we are making together in the fight against inflation. And we saw that in last week's inflation numbers. Inflation is back in the target band for the first time since 2021. It means that the inflation that we inherited at 6.1% is now 2.8%, at the same time as underlying inflation is coming down, monthly inflation is coming down in welcome and encouraging ways. When we came to office, inflation was much higher and rising. Now it's much lower and falling, but we know that people are still doing it tough, and that's why our cost of living help is so important. Now, Mr Speaker, the outcome today is not a surprise, but I direct the House to the new forecast released by the Independent Reserve Bank today, because what those forecasts show is whether it's headline inflation or trimmed mean inflation, they have lowered their forecasts for inflation over the next little while, Mr Speaker. So if you take inflation overall, Mr Speaker, headline inflation, they have downgraded it from, for the end of this year, from 3% to 2.6%. For the middle of next year, from 2.8 to 2.5, the middle of the band. And they've downgraded inflation even out in 2026, Mr Speaker. And for those opposite who ask me about trimmed mean inflation, they should also recognise that trimmed mean inflation, they have lowered their forecast for trimmed mean inflation across all of the forecast period, Mr Speaker. So what this shows is that we've been able to fight inflation without ignoring risks to growth and without sacrificing the gains that we've made in the labour market. We have struck the right balances by taking the right economic decisions for the right economic reasons. And because of that, we are confident but not complacent about a soft landing in our economy. We would much prefer a soft landing than to clean up after the hard landing that those opposite would prefer for political reasons, Mr Speaker. What these new forecasts show is that we continue to make welcome and encouraging progress in the fight against inflation, and the new forecasts released by the Independent Reserve Bank in the last few minutes go to that point.